to this episode of Frontrunner 2020.
A perfectly good potential female candidate doesn't think she's qualified because she wants to know every single thing she's going to be asked to do if she runs for city council, if she runs for school board, if she runs for state representative. And there's so many, but yet there's so many strengths that women have, and let's talk about those.
Right, Lillian. What we'd like to do at this point is for people to think about their strengths. So let's ask the audience, what are the 3 best strengths that would serve you well as a candidate for political office? And you can select more than one. I like people. I'm outgoing. My professional network. My family, friends, and community circle. I know the issues. I know elected officials. Well, I like people. I'm outgoing. That's 60%. My professional network, 60%. My family, friends, and community circle, 60%. I know the issues, 60%. I know elected officials, 40%. Lillian?
Yes, these are about what I would have thought. You know, people on this call are already sort of, you know, thinking about or have been involved in politics at some level. I like the fact that, you know, people, 60% of the folks know the issues. And I guess that leads to, you know, some of the things that women do in their lives that they don't necessarily think that can translate into running for office. And that includes, you know, women, you know, usually serve on their PTAs. They have leadership positions in homeowners associations. There's neighborhood watches where women normally are involved, room mothers, classrooms. Then they raise money, and that's the part where, you know, again, when we talk about fundraising, for many women, that's the thing that gets them, because they're not used to asking money for themselves. They'll raise money like crazy for their sports teams or the band or for their kids, you know, homeroom class so that they win the pizza party by buying so many magazines. But the idea of calling donors or potential donors or friends and asking for money for their political campaign is very, very scary for many women. And that's something that, you know, that's something that women can learn, and they can also have people help them, and they also can realize that they're not asking that money for themselves. They're asking that money so that they can serve their community in a legitimate role. And that's one thing, you know, politics, good politics is about representation for your family. It's about community. And in order to serve your community in the most legitimate way possible, what greater gift that you can give to your community is to serve them with pride and honor. And the other thing, and this is where when someone goes and sees a political consultant, usually the first thing they ask is, you know, what's the worst thing that could happen? You know, what have you done or not done, or, you know, if this turns bad, what is it? What's the worst thing that can happen? And from my experience, usually I've never met a candidate that didn't say that was a rich experience. It may have been hard. It's certainly hard when you lose. Those of us that worked in 2010 in Texas know what that feels like. It's not good at all. But the idea of the folks you get to meet on a campaign, that's such an amazing experience, to work with people that all have one common goal, which is to better their communities by having representative government. I mean, that's an honor to work on. And I mean, those of you who have worked on campaigns know that, you know, there is no greater friendship that you can have than people you've been in the trenches with on campaigns. Those are your, you know, best friends for the rest of your lives. I mean, that's been my experience. Now, when we're talking about women, what we do know is that there's an opportunity to change these numbers, to change these dreadful numbers of less than 17% representation. And that's because we have a huge tide out there of voter discontent. And we have an opportunity to capture that. And with women, since most incumbents are middle-aged men, women fit the bill as the outsider. And they have the potential to do very well. They're viewed as collaborative. They're viewed that they're outside the system. And, you know, the purpose of, you know, this discussion is to consider the fact that if we elect women, that in this tide of voter discontent, they could win. I mean, if they run, they could win. And what we know, it's not a problem electing women. It's a problem of getting them to run. Women are highly electable. The research shows that when women run, they win as often as men. When women do run, it also shows that they raise money equally to men. But there's some issues. They're less likely to be recruited by the political establishment. Their party structure favors men. That's what the research shows. Candidates who are recruited by their party structure, of course, are more likely to win. And in only 1/3 of the races nationwide at the national level did we have women candidates. Certainly we can find 75 qualified women to get on the ballot. If they don't get on the ballot, they will not win, what we know. And I have an example of that is in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we had a governor's race a couple of years ago, and the lieutenant governor that I was supporting, and many of us, she should have been at the top of the ticket. Had she been at the top of the ticket, we would have had a different result. She was a much stronger candidate than the gentleman, the state senator that ran for governor. He knows it, she knows it. I'm not disclosing anything that everyone doesn't discuss, but we lost a bunch of seats because we had the wrong person on the top of the ticket. And when you ask her, and her name's Jody Wagner, and she served at this, it was a state comptroller in Virginia. When you ask her, you know, she very much regrets. She thought she'd have a trajectory. She thought if she won lieutenant governor, then she would eventually run for governor. But she was such a strong kid. A male would have not made that decision. She'll say that. And if she had run at the top of the ticket, we would have had a different result. So these kind of issues matter.
Amen. Well, then that begs the question, in the face of this information, research, and so on, let's ask. Please go ahead and make your selection in the control panel. Why don't women run for office? And you can select more than one. No one asks them. Fear of fundraising. Lack of confidence. Looks too hard. Seems too complicated. Wary of potential negative campaign against them. Economics. Most women work 2 to 3 shifts.
Hey, Ron, I wanted to explain that 2 to 3 shifts was the idea that it's not a shift job. What I was referring to was the 2 to 3 shifts are the taking care of the family, working the outside the home, taking care of a sandwich generation, usually elderly parents, and those kind of things that women are confronted with, those kind of shifts in household work.
Okay, thanks, Lillian. Yeah, I think everybody can identify with that. Okay, so no one asked them, 67%. Fear of fundraising, 33%. Lack of confidence, 33%. Wary of potential negative campaign, 67%. And economics, most women work 2 to 3 shifts, 67%. Lillian?
Yes, this is about, this looks right from the candidates that I've spoken to and the women that we've worked with. And this idea, and we'll go through this a little on our next couple of slides, but this idea of, not asking them, the action plan has to be all of us asking women run. Organize your contacts in a database, ask for help. And the one thing that I think we need to really, amplify is be prepared. If you haven't allowed, you can't blame the party structure if you haven't said, you know what, I'll think about running. And in every jurisdiction it's different, but if you can't blame people when they don't know you're interested. And this idea of being prepared, I've seen several times when candidates, most of them male, not unfortunately, they were all good males, that there became a seat open because somebody retired and they'd already put their name in the hat, and they didn't think they'd run for 2 or 3 years down the road, but at that time opportunity opened up, and then they ran and won the primary, and a couple of them are sitting in the State House and here in Virginia. And then we have one of our colleagues that's a part of, came through the Emerge project, which is, we'll talk about later, is a great candidate and had sort of a trajectory of what she thought she was going to do as far as running, and then there came a special election, and this was in Phoenix, Arizona, and she ran 3 years earlier, and she, even though she hadn't planned on it, she only lost by, she had 46% of the vote, even though she hadn't planned on running for 3 years in the future. So the action plan needs to be developed. If we can get women to identify that they're willing to do it, they need to develop their action plan. And the other thing is, there's some men that need to be replaced. We want to replace those men. We have lots of males out there that are highly evolved, that are doing great governing. We want to replace the unevolved. Now, for women, it's a lot like voter contact. It takes 10 touches. When you're recruiting voters, you've got to send them direct mail, you've got to canvass their house, you've got to make 1 million phone calls, you've got to touch them. With women, it's the same. They need to hear 10 different ways that they should consider running, that you'll help them do a fundraiser, that you'll make sure that they have the political consultant needed so that they know how to, know what their win number, know how many votes they're going to need for whatever election they're running. It takes 10 touches. We're not giving them, as a community, we're not giving them those 10 touches. And, this is my, the next slide I talk about, we got to get out of the shadows of men who run our communities and run ourselves. And there's many men doing great work. There's a lot of women doing great work, but they're not legitimized. They're doing the work in public service at many levels, but for them putting their name on the ballot, they should be the representative, or they should have an opportunity to be elected the representative. And we think that some of the gridlock in the country would look different if we had adequate representation. Representation meaning what we represent in the population. And just sort of to when women are running, what can help or to enhance women running is to ask a woman to run, manage her work in the campaign. When you work on campaigns, what we all recognize, you'll see a lot of women working on campaigns. Asking these women, work on a couple of campaigns, look at it, you can run one too, support them financially. And it's sort of a call to action, I guess, is I discussed with Ron, is we have a call to action. What can we do as a community to get women to run?
Well, we're going to ask you to make a personal commitment now, given the importance of this and the opportunity to bring about change. Which of these are you going to do? Seriously consider running myself? Again, you may choose more than one. Ask a woman I know to run, manage or volunteer on a female candidate's campaign, support women candidates financially. Great. Seriously consider running myself, 75%. Ask a woman I know to run, 75%. Manage or volunteer on a female candidate's campaign, 100%. Support women candidates financially, 50%. Lillian?
Wow, that's great. I wish I knew who was out there, but I'm excited about it. That's great. I mean, if we can get people running, we can get them elected. If we can get them elected, governance will change.